Good evening, everybody. It's Thursday evening once again. It's been a very interesting week here in Sacramento, anyway, for sure. What with the forest fires and super bad air quality, and it's been hot. The last few days have been really, really hot. Today, major change. The air quality index was, I think, about 20, which is extremely low. I don't think I've seen it that low in a very long time. And we had some clouds in the sky this morning. Lots of pretty blue skies, and the temperature is much cooler. Although I think it did get close to 100 today, if not 100. But it got warm, but not as hot as it's been. So welcome to this beautiful Thursday evening. If you're here with me live, please leave a chat saying hello so that I can greet you. And if you're watching this on a recording, please say hi so I can respond and acknowledge that you at least paid me a visit. So let's begin. We got some things to talk about tonight, but I want to get into some of our normal discussion before we do. So to start the evening off, excuse me, let's do this. Okay, so what's my update? So you may have noticed it. I'm sitting in something that's new to me. I moved into this apartment in 2007, so it's been, 14 years? 14 years. And in that whole time, the only chairs that I have had to sit in have been wooden dining room table chairs. Not the most comfortable things in the world, no padding, just wood, wood back, wood seat, wood. This week, thank you to my best friend Dave Edwards, I was gifted this very comfortable chair. Oh, look at that. I just backed into my screen. No, you're not on drugs. It's a vinyl. Well, maybe you're on drugs. I don't know. But anyway. It's very comfortable. He received a new chair and he gifted me this one. And I'm very grateful for it because it's definitely more comfortable. And as I get older, comfort has become a bit of a priority. So that's what's new so far. And sometimes no news is good news, right? So anyway, that's what's new. So I thought there's a couple of things that are interesting in the world of COVID. So let's just dive into that real quick. So let's do a COVID minute, and still no music to it. I don't know. I keep saying one of these days I'll get around to it, but one of these days never seems to show up. So there you have it. Anyway, let's take a look here. And this is Capital Public Radio's California. Oh, hang on. I got to share that. I just clicked on the tab. It doesn't work that way, right? Got to share it. So we'll go to share and not Sunny and share, but share tab. There we go. Share tab, not Sunny and share. There we go. So here's a little graph, and it shows hospitalizations in Sacramento County. And you can kind of see the peaks and the valleys, right? And this is our latest peak, and it looks like hospitalizations are going down. That's a good sign. I hope that's a continuing trend. We need to see those numbers go down because what follows suit, of course, are the ICU patients, and hopefully we'll see that number go down too. And if both those numbers go down, then we'll definitely see death numbers go down as well. So that's a good sign. I hope it becomes a trend. One of the things that I've noticed about people is that at the beginning of COVID, we were all willing to knuckle down, and what was called it was called flatten the curve. Remember that? Flatten the curve. So we all did all this work to flatten the curve, and we did it. But then For some reason, people thought we flattened the curve. Now it's okay to go back to doing what we were doing. And so off came the masks, off came the distancing, and bang, it started shooting up again. So there's this weird sense of security that takes place. As we see the numbers go down, we get this sense that, oh, we're okay now. But if you look at the numbers, even though it's gone down, it's still high, and the virus is still out there. So even though the numbers go down, we cannot let up. We have to maintain our diligence. And hey, AJ, oh, thank you so much. That makes a lot of difference for me. I love it when I get encouragement, and the word love is not used often enough in my book. And congratulations to you on your new job. And I'm so happy that you're happy, even in the midst of personal grief and loss, that there are still, bright lights that shine so that we don't get completely lost in our own, what should I say? Our own stuff. I guess I'll put it that way. I don't know how else to say it. I miss not seeing you, AJ, as often, but one of these days we'll reconnect, right? So anyway, so that's what we've got here with the hospitalizations. I was listening to a podcast earlier this week, and the journalist was interviewing a COVID-19 specialist. And they asked, what about this new variant, the MU? And there was this little silence. And the specialist said, well, it's called mu. It's a Greek letter. There was delta, lambda, mu. And it's not MU, it's mu. And so the guy said, oh, okay. So it's funny to me that the journalist didn't even do their own homework. But it's the newest variant. And one of the problems with people not, getting vaccinated and doing what they can to stop the spread is that the larger the pool of virus that's out there, the greater variants we will be seeing. And the greater opportunity for these variants to spread. And let's just take a look here. It says, here's what you need to know about COVID-19's mu variant. So let's take a gander at that. What does it say here? It was first identified in Colombia in January, Colombia country, South America, and has since caused isolated outbreaks in South America, Europe, and the U.S. So it's still small in its transmission. It's a variant of interest. It may make vaccines and treatments less effective, but they don't have the evidence for it. So it's, sometimes I don't even like talking about this new stuff because they make these claims with no evidence, and I don't see the use in that. I don't see what good that does us. Let's wait for the evidence to come in before we start making claims as to how this variant is going to behave. It doesn't seem to be spreading quickly. That's a good thing. And most countries remain concerned about the highly contagious Delta variant. So that's where we're at right now. So if you are new to the world of vaccines, I thank you very much for getting vaccinated. Here's some more comments here. How's that new chair treating you? Looks good. Thanks, David. I mentioned at the beginning of the show how I received this chair and how you gifted it to me and how much I appreciated it. It makes falling asleep in my chair so much easier and comfortable. Having lived on wooden chairs for 14 years. That's all I had, wooden chairs for 14 years. Maybe I'm part Amish. I don't know. But thank you very, very much. I'm very, very thankful for the chair. And hi, Cindy. Happy birthday. Today's Cindy's birthday. And you know what? Since it's your birthday, let's see what I can do here. I think I can do a little something special here. Where is it? Oh, here we go. Happy birthday to Cindy. Yay, happy birthday. Don't have any music. Happy birthday to you. But there you go. It's Cindy's birthday. Let's all celebrate and have a good time, as the song goes. All right. You're welcome. You're welcome. But back to her comment, I'm having to isolate because someone I know was exposed to COVID this week. Nuts. So let me just ask, have you taken time to be tested to see whether or not you contracted it? That would be good to know, right? But that's a bummer. You know, after all this time, and as careful as you have been, that this has happened. That's unfortunate. But thankfully, she says, Cindy says that she just found out today. So so it's new. Okay. But the good news is that being vaccinated, even if you were to start showing some symptoms, probably would not end up in anything hospitalized. You'll probably just have a cold type of symptoms. And you're going to get a test on Monday? Okay. All right. And then you'll know more. And if you don't, by Monday, they would know for sure whether or not you're carrying any viral load. And if not, then you don't have to quarantine. But still, what a pain, right? What a pain. If only people, vaccinations aren't 100%. So even if we're vaccinated, it's still no guarantee that I might at some point acquire the virus. But the chances are slimmer. And for people who are unvaccinated and they contract COVID-19 and then they end up transmitting it to others, I just wish people would think a little bit more about how their lives impact us all. And yeah, exactly. And, doing what we can to get back to the common good and the general welfare and start thinking about other people more than ourselves. I don't know what it'll take. I don't know if it's even possible at this point, I try to keep shade in my eyes because these lights, but whatever. I don't know. And one of the things we're going to talk about tonight is American exceptionalism. But before we get there, what I forgot to do, and this is what I'm going to do right now, is I've got a picture here of the chair. I want to share that picture real quick, just so you know how comfy this thing is. So there's the chair. It's really super comfy, and it's actually got a little cushion back here, a little lumbar support, which I may put on. I'm trying to decide whether or not it's most comfortable for me. But it's a great little chair, and I'm so thankful for it. Thanks again. So anyway, that's my chair story. So what we're going to talk about this evening for a bit here is American exceptionalism. And we've talked in the past about privilege, especially in the context of white privilege. But in the COVID world, I think there's something that's national privilege. And that's what I see when we start talking about the booster shot. There are some people I think probably be a good idea. They're vulnerable, or they're super elder. And before I go any further, I'll put this up there. Thanks, Dave. Or they're super elder, and then it's probably a good idea to get that third booster shot. But in a country where we have the vaccine is very, very available. And if you're unvaccinated, it's usually by choice. And that there are countries around the globe that have yet to receive the vaccine at all, period. And for us to start talking about a third shot, a booster shot, to me is a little bit of national privilege, right? That we're putting our nation before the rest of the world when we don't really need to do that, because the people who are vaccinated are the ones that wanted it at this point. I'm really convinced that the unvaccinated population are those people that have chosen to be unvaccinated. It's not because they don't have access to the vaccine. Now, I may be wrong, and I reserve the right to always be wrong, but I don't think that's the case in our country. So my preference would be that before we start dishing out that third dosage to people who are already vaccinated that don't need that extra protection, like immunovulnerable people and seniors, that we start really working hard to get the rest of the world vaccinated. Because if we don't, then there's still a big breeding ground for the virus to mutate and to come back to the United States. And if it mutates to the point where it does an end run around the vaccine, then we're back to square one. And we need to contain this rascal. So to me, that's a form of privilege, and it's a form of American exceptionalism, I think. Also, let's get into that a little bit, and please, I will try to keep monitoring comments so that I don't miss anything, and I'm sure there'll be comments here. At least I hope so. So the first thing we're going to look at is from the New World Encyclopedia. There we are. American Exceptionalism. So it's New World Encyclopedia. So research begins here. They're not modest, are they? American Exceptionalism, and and what is American Exceptionalism? So thank you very much, and I'm going to take a stab that looks like. Maybe, is that Korean? Is that the Korean language? Is that I don't know. But thank you very much, and welcome to the show. And then my buddy Dave, he got really long-winded here. What's he got to say? Speaking of privilege, I want to share that the little town we usually vacation in on the Oregon coast has a breakout of COVID right now. And there is a big group of anti-vaccine and anti-mask people there. And a group of those people are going shopping at the local grocery store, which has a mask mandate, while refusing to wear masks and open carrying a gun on their hips, exercising their rights. Kind of sums up where we're at, Dave. It's unfortunate. It's sad. Oregon has a very, very interesting history all on its own as far as privilege, white privilege, and racism and discrimination. Look back to the roots of the state of Oregon, and it's not good. And my guess is there's some of that still there, and so that's unfortunate. I'm sad. Sorry to hear that, Dave, because I know how much you enjoy you and Amy and your daughter making that trip up there. But hopefully it'll clear up soon and you'll be able to get back. So let's dive into American exceptionalism a little bit. And what I'm going to try to do is just cover some highlights so that we can get to the call-in portion of the show. But feel free to leave comments because I'll be monitoring that as we go forward. So let's look at that very first paragraph under American exceptionalism, and let me go full screen on it here so it'll be easier for you to see. A little bit easier for you to see. Okay, and I might just bump it up here a little bit, see if we can get some of the font larger. And of course we can. I like large font. Who doesn't, right? Okay. American exceptionalism has been historically referred to as the belief that the United States differs qualitatively from other developed nations because of its national credo, historical evolution, or distinctive political and religious institutions. The difference is often expressed in American circles as some categorical superiority, to which is usually attached some alleged proof, rationalization, or explanation that may vary greatly depending on the historical period and the political context. However, the term can also be used in a negative sense by critics of American policies to refer to a willful nationalistic ignorance of faults committed by the American government. So I'm going to pause right there because we've got a date coming up, Saturday. And to me, Saturday is a mixed bag. It's 9/11. It's the anniversary of the tragedy that befell in our country in 9/11 and the loss of thousands of lives. But it's a mixed bag to me because there's so much that goes with 9/11. Was it a tragedy? Absolutely. Absolutely. I always, mourn for the loss of life. But, there's a context that's really hard. It's hard. Looking at why did it happen in the first place? Looking at how insulated our country has been. World War I wasn't fought in our country. World War II wasn't fought in our country. All the wars that we fought, Korea, Vietnam, it wasn't fought in this country. We have never seen the horror of war that other countries experience. When we go over to, we'll just jump forward a little bit, Afghanistan and Iraq and Syria and Libya and Somalia and Yemen and all these different places. We don't experience those wars. And the Civil War was fought here. Yes. But how far back was that? I mean, unfortunately, we don't, that the context of that war, and it's been so glamorized and glorified that it's easy to gloss over the horrors of that war and the thousands, hundreds of thousands of Americans died on both sides of that conflict, on both sides of that war. It was horrible, horrible, horrible. And families fought against families. And God help us that we don't head towards that again. But it seems like that's a possibility in this country, that we're going to move forward into a new type of a civil war because we just have the inability to get along. But the horrors of modern warfare, let's couch it that way, let's put it that way. The Civil War was still fought pretty much face to face. You saw your enemy eye to eye. Even in part of World War I, the beginning of World War I, maybe even the beginning of World War II, people fought eye to eye more so than by the end of World War II. We were dropping bombs and we were fairly disconnected from the enemy. And then as we move into a more of what's happened in the last few decades, with drone warfare and all the wars being fought overseas. I mean, even in Afghanistan and in the war of Iraq, how many times did our government prevent us from seeing the casualties as they came home? With the Vietnam War, we got to see the ugliness of it because journalists were embedded and actually went where combat was. We got to see that the war. We could see the war from our living rooms. I remember as a child growing up, seeing the atrocities of the Vietnam War from my living room. But still, the war's not being fought here. We may sense the horror of war from a distance, but we don't get that visceral being in it kind of I don't know if I'm going to survive kind of a thing. Yeah, Cheryl, you remember that too? Yeah. And then I forget what president it was. I think that it was the Bush administration that they refused to allow the casualties, the troops who came home to be shown on television. No one, it was like, out of sight, out of mind. We're not going to acknowledge the casualties. And that's just on our side. When you look at the thousands of American troops that died in Afghanistan and Iraq, it's just those two countries. When we turn it around and look at the casualties on the other side, the civilians and the troops on the other side, it's war is just a horrible, horrible thing. I think it was it General Sherman? I'm not a fan of General Sherman, Civil War, but I think it was General Sherman who coined it the phrase "war is hell." It's not pretty. It's horrible. It's horrible, and it destroys the countryside. I mean, how much of? I remember hearing from Iraq about we were using uranium enhanced metals for our tanks and bombs and that sort of thing, and that the radiation was actually causing physical disabilities in the kids that were being born. The overflow of the war. When I look at what's taken place since 9/11. Yeah, that's a sad thing, and maybe we'll talk about that. But for a lot of people, it's very profitable. It's very profitable, and that's why we do it. One of the reasons we do it is for the profit margin. I mean, very sad, very sad. But in this country alone, 9/11 brought us the Department of Homeland Security. It brought us the Patriot Act. It brought us the NSA spying as it did. It brought a lot of things. It brought the TSA in our airports, right? I'm not saying that wasn't, maybe some of that was needed, but how much it was just over the top. It was just over the top. And that's just in our own country. And when, most recently anyway, even when we look at terrorism in our country, the vast majority of terrorist occurrences are homegrown terrorists. They're not from overseas. They're not coming here from other countries. They're right here. I think that 9/11, as big a tragedy as it was, is something that we need to take a deep dive into it. Yeah, how many generations in the Middle East will remember what we've done to them and how we will handle their reactions? You know what? I think they're going to remember it for a long time. And I think there's going to be blowback. I remember at the very beginning of the discussion around 9/11 was this idea of blowback, that we had a military base in Saudi Arabia. We were doing all these things in the Middle East, and Osama bin Laden, his family was part of royalty in Saudi Arabia. He was kicked out of Saudi Arabia, but if you look at the majority of the pilots of those planes, the terrorists that took place in 9/11, those terrorists, the majority of them were Saudi Arabians. They were Saudis. And I think that, there's a phrase, the chickens have come home to roost. And I think that there's another phrase, when you sow the wind, you will reap the whirlwind, right? And as we sow our military around the globe, the chances of us receiving blowback is greater. So it's something that I think we really need to take stock of, and to romanticize and to glamorize war is bad. Now, remembering the fallen, Absolutely. We've got many families that are still grieving over the loss of a loved one, whether it was in the Twin Towers or the airplane or the Pentagon. And that's real, and that needs to be acknowledged and respected. Um, but, you know, so for me, it's a mixed bag, right? Because on the one hand, there's that, and on the other hand, you have all this other destruction that has fallen suit. And, we were so quick to gain revenge. Um, if they don't glamorize war, who will fight? I don't know. I mean, if you look at, this is a whole nother subject, a whole nother topic, probably. But if you look at the demographics of our voluntary military, it's changed a lot, right? It has become more people of color, more people from an economically depressed situation. That for a lot of people, it's their ticket to education, it's their ticket out of poverty, right? And so, yeah, I don't know. It's and we glamorize it. We've got so many songs that glamorize war. And, I watched a movie yesterday. I remember watching it as a kid. It's called The Guns of Navarone. And it's a fictional story. The movie's based on a book. And it was filmed in 1961, I think it was. Would you like to know more? So, for those of you who don't know that reference, it's from a movie, and it has to do with these monster bugs. That's a hint. And it's based on a book by Robert Heinlein. And if anybody out there besides Dave knows the name of this movie, it was a book, feel free to put it in the chat. We'll let it go for a minute. And if no one can come up with it, I'll let you know what it is. I find it absolutely hysterical. But the author, Robert Heinlein, was a libertarian. And a lot of libertarian ideas were built into the storyline. So it's really interesting. It's like, how do you become a citizen? What do you have to do to become a citizen? And it's just very, very interesting. Who were the elite officers? Who were the just the regular troops? What types of, what are the demographics, of what makes that up? And anyway, there was a segment, they had like news, and it'd give a little news item, and then it would say, would you like to know more? And that's where that comes from. Yeah. And there's a segment of, what's the guy who does the Daily Show? Trevor Noah. He does a segment called If You Didn't Know, Now You Know. And those are usually very enlightening. So if you ever get a chance to see one of those, give it a look-see. Let's get back to this article here. We've got a few more minutes before I want to pop it over to questions. But let's come down here a little bit. The term was first used with respect to the United States by Alex de Tocqueville during his first visit to America in 1831. So if you look down, if you remember our discussion last week, we talked about manifest destiny, the annexation of much of the western United States, Oregon Territory, Texas, California. Scrolling on down. The term was later used in the 1890s by Republicans as a theoretical justification for U.S. expansion outside of North America. The term has also come to describe the belief that the United States has an exceptional position among countries and should not be bound by international law except where it serves American interests. I find it fascinating that we are members of the United Nations, but we hold ourselves apart from the United Nations. So we don't sign on to global treaties. We don't, we're part of a group of nations that can veto things. There's only a handful of them. It's us, and I think the Russians and China. There's a couple more that we have veto right. And yet at the same time, we won't allow anything that comes out of the United Nations to be imposed upon us. We're above that. We've got national privilege, right? And that paragraph ends by saying, this view has come under stress due to international condemnation of U.S. human rights practices in the context of the war on terror since 2001. And I think that, it's easy for us to remember atrocities, right? Thinking back to, I'm sure there were atrocities in World War One, and I'm sure there were atrocities in World War Two. But since we were the victors, right, the victors aren't held to war crimes, even though I'm pretty sure we committed some, but we weren't held to them. But when you got to the Vietnam War, I remember Lieutenant Calley and the My Lai massacre, which is just an ugly, ugly piece of the history in that war. But I'm thinking it's probably the tip of the iceberg. They're the guys that got caught, right? Had that helicopter pilot not intervened, who knows if we'd ever found out about it? Who knows? I don't know. The psychiatrist that worked with Lieutenant Calley after that, he's written some books. His name is M. Scott Peck. He wrote The Road Less Traveled, which was instrumental in my life during a very serious turning point. But then he wrote a book called People of the Lie, where he talks about his work with Lieutenant Calley and about evil in general. It's a disturbing book to read, but it's very enlightening at the same time. To just be real. So oftentimes we talk about things through rose-colored glasses, right? Think positive, and sometimes there's some negative that we really need to face and deal with. And then you get into what's happened in the Middle East since Afghanistan. We've got Abu Ghraib, right? That was horrible, horrible, horrible. There's been instances where civilians were killed. And unfortunately, our previous president, gave clemency or whatever it was to some of those soldiers that committed war crimes. And to me, just the fact that we have a place called Guantanamo Bay, and it's located in Cuba. Here's a country that we have placed very, very dire sanctions on. We have basically locked them into the 1950s. History has stopped in a lot of ways in Cuba because of our sanctions. And yet, we maintain this military prison in Cuba. And I don't get that. I know that at one point President Obama wanted to bring them to the United States because we've got the capacity here to do it. But he was stopped. Congress didn't want to do it. Both Democrats and Republicans said, nope, we're not doing that. So he was never able to close Guantanamo Bay. That would have been a good thing, but he wasn't able to do it. So there's atrocities, right? And I think a lot of it is that America holds itself above the law. Often. We are not the bastion of civilization. There are other countries that have gone through this whole exceptionalism phase. You got the British Empire, Israel, USSR, Nazi Germany, ancient Rome, China, France. This is something that I think nations go through to feel superior, right? Makes no, it's a way for us to feel good about who we are and what we do, because so much of what we do is just not, it's not good, right? Puritan roots. We talked about the Puritan roots of American exceptionalism, the American Revolution and republicanism, immigration, right? A core argument of exceptionalism is that America is unusually attractive to immigrants from all parts of the world for two reasons. First, advocates of American exceptionalism say that economic and political opportunities are unlimited, that the United States possesses an unusually high degree of social mobility. Now ask yourself, is that really true? Since the late 19th century days of Andrew Carnegie and Carl Schurz, immigrants have risen to the top of the economy and the political system. The American dream describes a perceived abundance of opportunities in the American system. Secondly, immigrants can become Americans by accepting American values. And then critics point out that America is hardly unique in its appeal to immigrants, and that countries like Australia, Canada, and New Zealand are equally popular and welcoming destinations. But you have to ask yourself, what are the opportunities in this country for everyone? And I would say it's not equal. Absolutely not equal. That whole idea, when I was a kid growing up, someone saying, you too can become president of the United States. I don't think so. I don't think it works that way. I think that people are groomed to become president. It may not, pride goeth before a fall. Isn't that the truth? Yeah. And you know what? We're very proud. And dollars. You're hitting all the marks, right? As long as capitalism is as dominant as it is, money is going to be the end and be all of things, end all and be all of things. Even in China, being an authoritarian country based in communism, is still capitalistic to a great degree. So the idea that democracy and capitalism go hand in hand is false, absolutely false. There are plenty of countries that have democracy that have socialism. They have democratic governments. Now, it's not like our government. They've got more of a parliamentary system, but they're socialistic, democratic socialists. That certainly wasn't true for girls. That comment was probably made when I was saying something that I'm not connecting the dots to. So if you can, no one told me growing up that I could be president. Isn't that the case? Yeah, because it wasn't open to girls. It wasn't part of someday a girl can become president. Now, I think it's the chances of a woman becoming president is greater today than it ever has been. But it's going to be interesting to see, can America actually do that? We've got global leaders that are women, and America can't seem to get a grip, right? So we'll see. We'll see. I hope, it would be great that anybody as a child could be told, someday if you want to, you can become president of the United States. And this is how you would do it, right? Whether you're a boy or a girl or, a child of color, an immigrant. Well, an immigrant, you have to be, born in this country. But, still look at our governor. We haven't had a female governor in California, right? We haven't had a governor of color in California. I think sometimes we have to ask ourselves how progressive California is really. I don't think we're as progressive as we like to think we are. hopefully that'll change. Hopefully that'll change. But it's got to be the right person too. You can't just have any old body. Someone who's you know really qualified for the work, and fits the ideals of the people that they govern, at least the majority of those ideals. So, so American exceptionalism, there's a lot to be discussed when it comes to American exceptionalism. The Cold War, aspects of arguments for American exceptionalism, a frontier spirit, mobility, the American Revolution, critique. And here's the critique of this whole idea, right? So this is a good website to peruse if you're so interested. It is the New World Encyclopedia.org. Let me go ahead and copy this here, and I'll put it on the stream here real quick. Give me 1 second while I throw this up there. I'm not going to throw up. I'm just going to create a little banner and add the banner. And there you go. If you wanted to copy that, you could take a look at that later on. But before we see, it's 7:48, so we'll take a couple more minutes here. I want to show you another website that I found that you may want to take a look at. We'll leave that up there for a little bit. And this is the website's Foreign Policy. Right, it's the name of Foreign Policy. Scroll up here. FP News. This is the myth of American exceptionalism. So this goes through some criticisms of this whole idea of American exceptionalism. Okay, so we'll just go through the myths real quick without discussing them a whole lot. That there is something exceptional about American exceptionalism, that we're unique in some way. Here's one sentence here. The British thought that they were bearing the white man's burden, while French colonialists invoked la mission civilisatrice, to justify their empire. Empires tend to do that, right? Portugal. Whenever you put someone else down, you got to justify why you're doing it. The United States behaves better than other nations do. Really? I don't know about that. Anyway, it goes into that. America's success is due to its special genius. Okay. I think one of the things that they're looking at right now is that educationally, that we're really soon going to be at a point where we're not able to compete globally in education like we have been. The smartest people aren't going to be coming out of the United States. And that's just because we are not investing in it's almost like, we're taking for granted that we are the best. And so we're not investing in people to ensure that we are at least as, that we're contributing to the globe, right? We are one of the wealthiest, if not the wealthiest nation the world's ever seen. But, I like to take a look at that and just, when you look at what happened in World War II, it was fought in Europe for the most part, some in Japan. But in the countries where the war was fought, those countries were pretty much destroyed. Their economies were destroyed. Their infrastructure was destroyed. And what did we do? We went in there, I think it's called the Marshall Plan. We went in with a building program. And the United States made lots and lots and lots of money rebuilding Europe and rebuilding Japan, rebuilding parts of the world that we destroyed, right? And so the 50s were very prosperous. When we look at, the 50s and the early 60s, and why was the United States so prosperous? It's because the rest of the world was bombed to smithereens, and we were really the only game in town. It wasn't that we were better. It's just that our infrastructure and our economy was intact after the war. And we made a lot of money rebuilding other countries. The United States is responsible for most of the good in the world. So we look at that in this article. God is on our side. Oh, isn't that a big one? Whoo-wee. That's loaded. Anyway, so I'll go ahead and we'll pop this one up here in case you wanted to write this down. Unfortunately, I'm not able to provide a hyperlink where you can actually just click on it. So here's the foreign policy one here. And we got another comment. When you travel to other countries, you get a real eye-opener on how backwards we really are. You know, one of the things I was thinking, that's really true, Cindy, super true. One of the things I was thinking about is how, you know, if a person is interested in what's really going on, is take a look at how other countries perceive the United States. And I would encourage people to find news media from other countries. I remember, I think it was it was either the Bush family or forget, one of the American politicians had gone to visit the Pope in Italy. And the reports here in the United States were all these glowing reports and this and that, how beautiful and wonderful. But then I heard from some friends that the press in Italy were not that way at all. It was a very different picture at all from as seen in the country of Italy itself. So I think it behooves us to get out of our national bubble when it comes to the news media. And unfortunately, I mean, I think, you know, travel is great for those that can afford it, right? And it's another one of those things where if you don't have the wherewithal to get out of the country and do some traveling and meet people, we just don't provide. We make that, and especially, you know, now I think with COVID, things are more expensive even. So we make it out of reach of the majority of people to do this type of traveling. So hopefully we'll figure out a way to make it cheap for people so we can become more of a global community. The internet has not made us more global. Yes, we can talk to each other. We can sort of see what's going on, but we really still haven't become a global community in a lot of ways. We're still very nationalistic. And I'm not just saying our country, but lots of countries are becoming more and more nationalistic. You know, so that's sad. So we've got a few minutes here left. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to transition the show to a call-in, and I'll let you know. First, let me, there's my phone, ha ha ha. And I'm going to go ahead and bring up the phone number. But before you call, if you so want to, there's their number, 916-545-5376. I need to get it set up. So first thing I need to do is put on my headphones so that I can hear the caller if we get one. So let me do that. Watch out for my shiny bald head. You might want to close your eyes. Oh, the glare, the glare. Okay. There's that. Now, got to go over here and turn off my do not disturb. It is now turned off. And there's my phone. So if anybody does want to call in, feel free to. We've got 5 minutes before the end of the show. So if no one calls in, we're going to be ending around 8 o'clock. And if you do call in and you want to chat, then we might go a little overtime. I'm fine with that. That's okay. That'd be cool. So, yeah. You know, I think that I know that there's a lot of hesitancy in teaching some of this stuff in history. One of the best books, if you're interested in history, one of the best books you can buy is The People's History by Howard Zinn. Because what he does is a brilliant man, brilliant. is he gives a history of the United States. I think it's called the People's History of the United States. I think is what it's called. He gives an alternate view of history, and he talks about all the things that aren't included in a normal history book, speeches and events, and it's just a different way of looking at the United States. He's got an interesting bio too. He flew a bomber in World War II, and I think he flew over Dresden during the bombing of Dresden, and they flew so low over the city that he was actually able to see the people on the ground, and he looked in someone's eyes, and it changed his world completely as to what warfare does to a human being, to our psyche. And he became anti-war. He was arrested many, many times, protesting the war in Vietnam. But People's History of the United States, you can get it in book form. You can get many of the speeches on CD. It became a play. Many very famous actors and actresses performed live those speeches. They became the character who wrote the speech and delivered it live. Those are very powerful to either listen to or watch on video. Very powerful. One of my favorite ones is Frederick Douglass when he talks about 4th of July. What does the 4th of July mean to me? Frederick Douglass, who a freed slave. What does the 4th of July mean? And it sort of throws the whole context of the United States into a greater perspective. Right now I'm just going to check to make sure that I've got all the sound turned on so that I can actually hear the call if it comes in. Yes, everything's on. Okay. If you call in or not, that's okay. I just want to make sure I don't miss you, right? If you call in and I miss you, then that would be unfortunate. But I don't want to miss anybody. So we got about a minute left. If you want to leave a final comment for me, that's great. If not, that's okay too. And I have no idea what next week's going to bring. There's just so much to talk about. We'll see, right? We've got forest fires that are happening in California. We've got storms. Climate's a big deal. So who knows? And maybe not. Maybe we'll not talk about any of that stuff. We got stuff here in town that's going on. There was a woman in Southland Park that was murdered this week. And I've got some thoughts on that. So it'll be over a week old if I bring it up next week, and I may not, because it's like a dog, right? This is the analogy I'm going to use. If you've got a dog that's not housebroken, and it does its business on the rug, and you wait a week before there's any discipline for that dog, the dog's not going to connect the dots. It's not going to be cause and effect, right? You've got to do it right away so that the dog makes an association between the behavior and the consequence. It's kind of like human beings. If something happens and you wait too long to talk about either the consequences or the events around it, then we sort of lose the context. Unfortunately, I think something like that will happen again, so we can talk about some things. But for now, it's not happening. So this brings us to the end of our show for tonight. I hope the rest of the week goes well, that we got great weather. Cindy, I hope that being quarantined isn't too difficult, and that it's resolved soon, and that you are healthy, and that you and Dale are both healthy, and that there's a great outcome there. And so until I see you all next week, be happy, be safe, and God bless you all.